Good morning.
Let's hope this clarifies a few things for us. Let's start talking, first of all, about this debate. You said you wanted it to be brutal and head-to-head, that you're going to relish it. Interestingly, and we've
I never said brutal.
No, it will be brutal.
Oh, I see.
It will be brutal.
Okay.
We understand, as it stands at the moment, that there was an ITV proposal that you'd agreed to on Sunday, the 9th of December, just before the I'm a Celeb final.
Yep.
And now we hear that Theresa May is having a debate on the BBC on December the 9th. So are you debating on opposite channels?
Well, it'd be quite difficult, actually, wouldn't it?
Yes. So do you know where you're going?
All I know is that I've accepted the idea of a debate, very happy to do so. I did that on Sunday night as soon as the Prime Minister made the suggestion. The ITV offer seemed a sensible one. It reaches a wide audience and the timing looked good to me because it's not inconveniencing people who may wish to watch other things later in the evening. One should always have respect for the viewers. And also, we want to get the widest possible
so your
and most
debate
diverse
is based
audience.
around people being able to watch the I'm a Celeb final.
Indeed so. Maybe I want to watch it myself as well.
Maybe, jokes aside, what is the point of a live TV debate when we now don't have a say? Is it just meaningless?
No, I think it is important because Parliament will have to vote probably, well, certainly on the 11th of December on the agreement that the Prime Minister has reached, which we will be voting against and Parliament will in all likelihood reject. I do think there has to be a public discussion about that, and if that is rejected, as I think it will be, the government then has to go back and negotiate something else, or face a vote of confidence and maybe have to step aside.
Oh, well, I mean, you had a vote of confidence yourself, which I think you lost, and you
well, the vote of confidence was within the Parliamentary Labour Party, yes.
Now,
but I did get re-elected with a larger vote of the party members.
We obviously, as a nation, and there are loads of bobs now, the people who are bored with this, but it is going to affect all our lives. Now, do you agree the Prime Minister? I mean, she has worked tirelessly for this. And so if she has worked tirelessly and you're sitting there watching it, what could you have done better? More than that, what will you do better? What do we get with you that she hasn't been able to negotiate?
We wouldn't start by being so aggressive towards the European Union. We wouldn't start by saying we will do separate trade deals with the USA and elsewhere.
But that's ages ago.
No, but
done now. If you, I'm sorry to interrupt, but then
that's fine.
But if
you're the interviewer, it's fine.
No. Well, you're the one we want to hear from. But my point is not what has been done; it's what will be done. So if you bring down the government, and if there's a general election, God knows how you'd fit that in before March. But if all of that happens, what will you do? We
would negotiate a customs union, a separate customs union with the EU, which would give us a say in what we do, rather than going into a system where the EU holds all the cards for an indefinite period, which gives us no say whatsoever on anything, and they decide if and when we decide to leave that system. For those people that voted to exit the EU because they didn't like being ruled over by the EU, in their words, in fact, this is worse.
But how long would that take? It's already been 2 years.
We would start straight away, of course, and yes.
But how long would it take?
Well, we argued for a transition period, which has already been now agreed.
Would it be another 2 years?
I hope not as long as that.
But it could be?
It could be some time, yes, but this is a serious issue because we have a country where many jobs are at stake if we lose that trade relationship with Europe. We also have a country where very many of our fellow citizens are living in desperate poverty and councils underfunded and all the other issues surrounding austerity, which is being ignored.
Yeah, no, we'll come to that in a moment, because I know definitely, I think from everyone's point of view, and certainly from our viewers' point of view, it would appear that all of your eyes are off every other ball. You're just on this. Nothing else appears to be being done. However, if there's another 2 years, and so you're now in number 10, let's say that you're in number 10, have you had, when you're in number 10, have you had another referendum?
We would have had a general election. We would have just been elected. We would therefore be in office. Our first priority would be to make an arrangement with the EU, which meant we could continue trade, which would meant we could continue manufacturing industry jobs.
They've said there's nothing else. Well, you don't get anything else. She's been sent back from Brussels.
When has there ever been a negotiation when one side says there's nothing else to do and there's always something? The EU have got form on this over decades. Look at the Lisbon Treaty. They renegotiated that for 2 years after the final step.
So are you saying that the EU are bluffing?
I'm saying that they are open to negotiations because they would understand that we would be coming in with a different mandate. We'd be coming in with a mandate which is about economic expansion and an anti-poverty programme. We'd be coming in with a mandate which would be about an effective, real trade arrangement with Europe.
An anti-poverty programme would not benefit Europe. That's home
Well,
politics.
there's many European Union citizens living in this country who've made a fantastic contribution to our society, who are feeling very stressed and very nervous at the moment, and I don't think they should be scapegoated or blamed. I think they've made a great contribution to our society.
Sorry, I'm as a mum, how will Brexit affect my children? You know, jobs, house prices. As a mum, that is a big worry.
Yeah. I get that, absolutely. If we crash out without a deal, then we have problems. We have problems over travel, particularly with students and study and all that goes with that. We have problems over trade because of manufacturing industry. Think of those companies that have supply lines. Ford, BMW, etc., all have long supply lines that come from Europe and from this country into Europe, all just-in-time stuff. If there's any kind of delay, then those factories are going to close.
But the deal exists now. It's been negotiated. I mean, the terms that the Prime Minister has brought back satisfy a great many people. And you're saying that, that under your leadership, it could be another 2 years. That would terrify most small businesses and some big businesses up and down the country. They literally don't know where to jump. They don't know what they're supposed to do. And with another 2 years where you guys actually literally still can't decide what you're doing,
I think what the Prime Minister has offered is not satisfactory. It doesn't protect manufacturing industry. It doesn't protect workers' rights, consumer rights and conditions, allows a growing divergence between us and Europe on that, and doesn't actually do what she claimed it would, which is the right to strike trade deals with other people. So I do think it says it's a big no, and I'm sure you follow it closely. MPs in Parliament of all parties and all opposition parties have serious and very severe criticism of this deal. I don't think there's, as of now, any chance of it going through on December the 11th.
And so, OK, so, I mean, she's ending free trade movement once and for all, a new skills-based immigration system, free trade area with the EU for goods, no tariffs, protecting jobs, no more sending vast sums of money to the EU, meaning we can spend it on the NHS. These are all things that the Tories have obviously said, but this is what they say is in this bill, protecting the rights of EU citizens living in the UK and UK citizens living in the EU, the ability to strike trade deals with other countries. I mean, that goes on. I mean, you think...
But it doesn't actually give those.
Good,
it gives
that's
you...
good enough. That's, you know, if this is what we've got rather than crashing out, then all right.
Well, that deal will create a border down the Irish Sea between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. That deal will not allow us to make trade deals with other parts of the world until the EU decides we're allowed to. It will not allow us to have any influence whatsoever on any deals or regulations because we have handed that over to somebody else.
So do we get a vote then? And it's called a people's vote, but I mean, it's not a people's vote. It's a second referendum because obviously, you know, you guys are not happy with what we said the first time.
Well, our priority is, first of all, to defeat this deal. At that point, if the government cannot command a majority in Parliament, and it can't on this deal, it's lost its deal with its agreement with the DUP, then maybe the better thing to do is have a general election so that the people of this country can decide who they want, who they want to govern. And at that point, the new government, hopefully us, would negotiate the best we can with the European Union.
I appreciate that.
And
you
at
have
that
said
point,
that. What about
decide...
a referendum? What about a second referendum? Would you say yes to a second referendum?
Our conference motion said it is one of the options that's on the table.
We don't need one of the options.
Well,
now,
it is.
I think most people watching now will think we're so close. It's March. We want to know now. Tell us what you're going to do.
The priority is the vote on December the 11th. After that, we decide what to do.
If there is a general election, will you stand on the fact that you will offer the British people?
We will stand on the basis of what we would negotiate with the European Union and what we would do for the people in this country who are suffering with food banks, suffering with poverty and all that. We would do all of that. And that, as you quite rightly say,
core
is
Labour
often been
policies,
ignored.
I understand all of that, but I think what we're all talking about now, you know, it's this house prices crashing 30%. Admittedly, this is the Bank of England's worst case scenario. The pound worse, less than the dollar. The sympathetic Labour paper here, May's deal will cost up to £100 billion.
Well, that's why the Mirror and amongst other papers are saying there's serious problems with this deal, and the Prime Minister really has to recognise.
But no deal is more expensive.
Well, the alternative isn't no deal. Nobody's going to allow no deal. How could we? No deal would be...
You've got until March.
Well, it's December, this weekend. We have
the
vote on the
11th. Before March.
We have the vote on the 11th. Parliament makes its decision. I suspect it's going to be no. The Prime Minister then has a limited number of days in order to go back to the EU and try and negotiate something else. That comes back to Parliament. All options are open then.
Are we in a mess?
I think this government has conducted these negotiations so badly, starting particularly the atmosphere in which they started them off, the sort of ludicrous comments made by Boris Johnson and others towards the European Union didn't help the atmosphere. I think we could do a lot better. And also the insults that have been thrown at European citizens living in this country are really disgraceful.
Do you feel sympathy for Theresa May?
Yes, at a human level, because leadership is a lonely place, and that can be difficult. And I think that people working very hard and doing their best should be respected for that. I personally never indulge in abuse of an individual. I don't do that. That's not my style of politics.
Would you want to do it?
Of course I would, otherwise I wouldn't be here today. But actually I have far more sympathy with people in our country that are going through terrible stress. I represent a constituency that includes people from all over Europe. They're frightened and concerned. I also recognise all over the country areas that have lost so much in public funding, left behind communities that have seen no government investment since the end of the big industrial period in the 80s. And I think we have to recognise that we live in a country that's increasingly divided, increasingly impoverished. Some people are losing hope in the future because they don't see a public service that works for them.
We have to leave it there, and no matter what happens, I mean, I think most people watching would think, OK, all right, so there's a general election, so you become the Prime Minister, your eye will still be on Brexit and not on what else is going on in the
I will
rest
make
of the
sure
country.
my eye is on bringing our country together, uniting people whichever way they voted in 2016, dealing with the serious issues, the mental health crisis, poverty, housing, all those issues that have been ignored for too long.
Which way would you vote?
Sorry?
If there was another referendum, which way would you vote?
Well, it depends, obviously, what the questions are. I voted personally in 2016 to Remain. I campaigned for Remain and reform, because I don't think the European Union is perfect.
Would you vote against that?
I don't think you do. Well, I want us to work with the European Union, so it depends what's on the ballot paper.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.